The heavy air of the auditorium was filled with quiet whispers. People from across the country had gathered for a rare event, an open question and answer session with Narendra Modiji. The hall was huge, lit with warm lights, and every seat was taken. The audience was a mix of young students, elderly villagers, business leaders, farmers, and teachers. Some had traveled for hours, even days, just to be here. The stage was simple, with only a table, 2 chairs, and a jug of water. Narendra Modiji walked in calmly, smiling, greeting the crowd with a gentle nod. The applause was warm, but there was also an air of curiosity. Everyone knew he had faced many challenges in life, but today, no one knew what questions might come his way. The first few questions were ordinary, about education, health, and village development. Modiji listened patiently to each person, answering with care and sharing small stories from his life. He spoke of his days helping at his father's tea stall, of sleeping under the open sky while traveling from town to town, and of moments when strangers had shown him kindness he never forgot. The audience listened with deep attention. Some nodded, others took notes, but then a young man from the back of the hall slowly stood up. His voice was steady, but his eyes carried a weight. He said, "Sir, you talk about serving the people. You speak of building a better nation. But what do you do when the people you serve hurt you? What do you do when the same people you helped turn their back on you?" The hall fell silent. It was not the kind of question people usually ask. Some in the crowd shifted in their seats. Others looked at Modiji with curiosity. For a moment, Modiji didn't answer. He took a sip of water, placed the glass down, and looked directly at the young man. "What is your name?" he asked. "Arjun," the man replied. Modiji nodded slowly. "Arjun, what happened to you?" The young man's voice trembled. "I was a teacher in a small village. I helped students with no books. I repaired benches in the school with my own money. I even taught at night so that the children of farmers could learn after working in the fields. But one day there was a misunderstanding. People thought I took money from the school funds. They didn't ask me. They didn't give me a chance to explain. They just pushed me out. They called me a thief. Even the children I taught for free stopped talking to me. I lost everything. Tell me, sir, what should I do when those I gave my life to help have broken me?" The silence in the room became heavier. Some audience members looked down as if they too had felt betrayal at some point. Modiji's eyes softened. He leaned forward slightly, as if to make sure his words reached Arjun's heart. "Arjun," he began, "there will be moments in life when you give your heart to others and they return it with pain. There will be days when you stand alone carrying the weight of lies while the truth hides in the shadows. I too have faced this. There was a time when people I trusted turned against me, not because I had done wrong, but because they feared change. They feared the truth. But you must remember, if you let bitterness fill your heart, then you give them victory twice, once for what they did, and again for what they made you feel." His words made the crowd lean closer. Modiji continued, "You are not defined by what they said about you. You are defined by what you do next. If your heart was pure, if your hands were clean, then you must rise again. Not to prove them wrong, but to prove yourself right. Serve again. Teach again. Do it so well that even the loudest lies will be silenced by the truth of your actions." Arjun's eyes were wet now. "But sir," he said, "how can I trust again? How can I give myself to others after this?" Modiji paused, his voice lowering. "Because Arjun, if you stop giving, the world loses one more honest man. If you stop trusting, the children who need you will lose their light. Trust again, not because people always deserve it, but because the work you do is bigger than the pain they caused you." The crowd was completely silent, but their faces were filled with emotion. An elderly farmer in the front row wiped his eyes. A young girl in a school uniform squeezed her notebook tightly. It felt as though the words were reaching into the hearts of everyone present, not just Arjun. Modiji then shared a story from his early days, a time when he had been accused of making a promise he never made. "I walked through that storm," he said quietly, "not by shouting at those who accused me, but by continuing to work. Over time, they saw my actions and realized their mistake. But by then, I had already moved forward. I did not wait for their apology. I had work to do. Arjun slowly sat down, but the weight in his eyes seemed lighter. Modi Ji picked up his glass again, took a sip, and looked at the audience. "Remember this," he said. "Those who hurt you today may not remember it tomorrow. But if you let it stop you, you will remember it every day for the rest of your life. Do not let pain chain your future. Walk forward. Someone, somewhere, is waiting for the kindness only you can give." The hall erupted into applause, but this time it was not the loud, excited kind. It was deep, steady, and full of respect. People clapped because they knew these words were not just for Arjun. They were for all of them. In that moment, many in the room understood something they had forgotten. Pain may be a chapter in the story, but it is never the whole book. The applause faded slowly, but the silence that followed carried a new kind of energy. Arjun remained seated, his head lowered, as if he was still processing every word Modi Ji had spoken. Narendra Modi Ji scanned the room, his eyes moving over the faces, some smiling faintly, others deep in thought. He knew that the next question could come from anywhere, and that each question was a window into the struggles people carried quietly in their hearts. A young woman in the second row raised her hand. She looked nervous, her fingers twisting the edge of her scarf. "Sir," she began softly, "my name is Mira. I am from a small town. I want to serve my community. I want to create something that will help people. But my own family says I should not waste my time. They tell me it's better to marry, to settle, to forget my dreams. I respect them, but every day my heart feels heavier. How do I choose between my family's wishes and my own calling?" The hall fell quiet again. Some people nodded. They had heard similar stories before, but Mira's voice carried a quiet desperation that made the question hit harder. Modi Ji took a moment before replying, letting her words hang in the air so they could be felt. "Mira," he said gently, "when you wish to serve, you are not running away from your family. You are honoring them in a different way. Sometimes people who love you will try to protect you from what they fear. They may not understand your dream because they have not seen the world through your eyes. Their love can look like doubt, and their care can sound like chains. But you must ask yourself, if you bury your dream now, will you still respect yourself 10 years later?" Mira looked down, tears welling in her eyes. Modi Ji's voice softened even more. "There was a time in my life when the safe path was in front of me. I could have chosen it, but my heart told me that serving people, truly serving them, was worth the uncertainty. I had no guarantee of success, but I knew that if I did not try, I would carry regret like a stone in my chest for the rest of my days. Your dream is not just for you, Mira. It belongs to those who will be helped by it." He then looked at the audience. "How many of you here have dreams you buried because others told you they were impossible?" Several hands rose hesitantly, and the room seemed to exhale together. "Every one of those dreams," Modi Ji said, "is a seed that never got water. Mira, do not let yours dry out. Instead of fighting your family, show them your dedication. Start small, prove your seriousness. When they see the lives you touch, their resistance may turn to pride, but remember, even if they never see it, you must still walk your path. Your calling is not a mistake, it is a responsibility." A murmur of agreement moved through the crowd. Some smiled at Mira with quiet encouragement. She wiped her eyes and nodded slowly, as if something in her heart had settled. But before Modi Ji could move to the next person, an older man stood up from the far corner. His voice was firm, but tinged with frustration. "Sir, it's easy to talk about dreams. But what about those of us who are too late? I am 62. I worked my whole life in a factory. Now the factory is gone, my savings are small, and my health is not good. What dream can I have now? What calling is left for me?" The question was heavy. Some in the audience looked away. Others looked at the man with sympathy. Modi Ji's gaze stayed steady. "Sir," he replied, "a dream is not always about climbing mountains. Sometimes it is about planting trees so that someone else may sit in the shade. You may not start a big business now, you may not travel the world, but you can still give something priceless, your experience. You can guide the young, you can share your skills with someone starting out. Every person you help is a piece of your dream living in the world. It is never too late to be useful. It is never too late to matter. The older man blinked, his hands trembling slightly. But will that really change anything? Shetty asked quietly. It will change everything for the one person you help, Modiji said firmly. And sometimes that is enough to change the world for them. You may not see the ripples, but they will exist. A few people in the audience began clapping softly, and soon the entire hall joined in. The older man sat down slowly, his shoulders less tense than before. Then from the very back of the hall, a boy's voice called out unexpectedly. Sir, do you ever feel lonely? The crowd turned curious about the child who had dared to ask such a personal question. He could not have been more than 12, wearing a school uniform that was slightly worn at the edges. Modiji smiled faintly. Yes, he said honestly, I have felt lonely many times. Leadership can be lonely, life can be lonely. But loneliness is not always a curse. It can also be a space where you learn about yourself, where you listen to your own thoughts without noise. The key is to fill that space not with sadness, but with purpose. When you give yourself to a cause, loneliness becomes lighter because you are not walking for yourself. You are walking for many. The boy nodded slowly, perhaps not understanding all of it yet, but feeling the warmth in the answer. And so, the questions kept coming, each one peeling back another layer of human struggle and hope. And with every answer, the hall seemed to grow closer, as if strangers had begun to see themselves in each other's stories. The second hour began with a kind of quiet anticipation. By now, the people in the auditorium were no longer just an audience. They were part of something personal, something almost sacred. Narendra Modiji sat calmly, but his eyes scanned the crowd with the attentiveness of a man who knew every voice in the room mattered. A young man in his 20s raised his hand. His clothes were clean but worn, his voice clear but carrying a trace of hesitation. Sir, my name is Rafiq. I work in a small shop. Every month, I send money home to my parents in the village. I want to study more, to improve my life, but if I leave my job, my family will suffer. If I keep working, my own life will never change. I feel like I am standing between two doors, and both are locked. What should I do? Modiji leaned back slightly, his hands resting on the table. Rafiq, he said slowly, many people think life gives us either a good choice or a bad choice. But often it gives us two difficult choices, and we must decide which pain we are willing to bear now to create less pain later. I too had to make such decisions when I was young. I wanted to study, but I also had responsibilities. So I found a way to do both, slowly, patiently, without expecting it to be easy. You may not be able to study full-time, but can you study for 1 hour after work? Can you take evening classes or learn from free resources? You do not need to change your whole life in one step. Small steps taken daily can cross mountains. Rafiq's eyes widened slightly. But sir, what if I fail? Modiji's voice deepened. If you try and fail, you will still be further ahead than if you never tried. And if you succeed, you will not only change your life, but you will give your family a better future too. Sometimes, Rafiq, the door is not locked. It is just very heavy, and it needs you to keep pushing. The hall gave a soft applause, but it was not just for Rafiq. It was for the idea that no one's dream needed to be buried under the weight of duty. As the sound faded, a middle-aged woman stood up. Her face was stern, but her voice carried pain. Sir, she said, I lost my son 2 years ago. He was in the army. People told me to be proud, to be strong. But every night I cry alone. I don't know how to live with this pain. I don't want to forget him, but I also don't want to keep feeling like this forever. How do I keep going? The room went utterly silent. Even the air felt heavier. Modiji's expression shifted. The empathy in his eyes was unmistakable. Madam, he said softly, your son gave his life in service to the nation. There is no greater honor, but also no greater pain. You cannot erase grief. It is not something to be defeated. It is something to be carried. Some days it will feel lighter, some days heavier. But you can give your pain a purpose. You can honor your son not just by remembering him, but by continuing the work he believed in. If he protected the country, you can protect the people around you, help the children in your area, support other families of soldiers, Speak to young people about courage. In this way, he will live through your actions. You will not just remember his sacrifice, you will continue it. The woman's lips trembled, but she nodded. She wiped her eyes with the edge of her sari and sat down slowly. The crowd gave her a long, respectful applause. Then, without warning, a voice from the back interrupted. Sir, do you ever regret becoming Prime Minister? People turned to see a man in his 30s wearing a plain shirt, his tone neither rude nor polite, just honest. The question hung in the air, heavier than most. Modi ji smiled faintly, as if he had expected such a question someday. Regret, he said? No. But there are days when the weight of the position feels like a mountain. People see the speeches, the events, the decisions. They do not see the nights without sleep, the choices where every option hurts someone. Leadership is not about living a comfortable life. It is about choosing to carry a burden so others can live with less of one. I knew it would not be easy. I also knew it was worth it. So no, I do not regret it. But I respect the cost it asks from me. His voice grew more personal. When you choose a path in life, you must be ready to pay its price. Whether you choose family, career, service, or art, everything demands something from you. The question is not whether the price is high, but whether the cause is worth it. For me, it is. The hall was quiet, but the silence was not emptiness. It was understanding. Just as Modi ji was about to take the next question, a commotion stirred near the entrance. A young boy ran in, holding something in his hand. A security guard tried to stop him, but the boy called out, "Please, I just want to give this to him." The boy was allowed through. He walked up to the stage nervously, holding a small, worn notebook. "Sir," he said, "this was my father's. He always said he wanted to meet you, but he died last year. He told me if I ever saw you, I should give you this." Modi ji took the notebook gently and opened it. Inside were pages filled with neat handwriting, ideas for improving villages, sketches of clean streets, lists of things to help farmers. Some pages were smudged as if tears had fallen on them. "What is your name?" Modi ji asked. "Manoj," the boy replied softly. Modi ji placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Manoj, your father's dreams are now in safe hands, and I promise you, I will read every page." The hall filled with applause, but this time, it wasn't just for the Prime Minister. It was for a man they never met, whose dreams were still alive through his son. The air in the auditorium had shifted. It no longer felt like a political event or a simple gathering. It had become something much deeper, something that touched the soul. Narendra Modi ji still held the worn notebook in his hand, his fingers resting on its weathered cover as if feeling the weight of the man's dreams within it. Manoj, the boy who had delivered it, stood nearby, his eyes wide and uncertain. Modi ji leaned toward him. "Manoj," he said gently, "what did your father tell you about these pages?" The boy hesitated, then answered softly. He said, "Dreams are only alive if someone cares enough to work for them. He told me, even if I couldn't finish them, someone else might." Those words hung in the air like a quiet challenge to everyone present. Modi ji nodded slowly. "Your father was right. Dreams are like seeds. Even if one person cannot see them grow, another can water them. And one day, they may stand tall enough for the whole world to see." The audience was silent, listening as if each word might change something within them. Then, an elderly man in the front row raised his hand. "Sir," he said, "we hear so many promises from leaders, but sometimes years pass and nothing changes. Why should we believe you will keep this notebook and not just put it on a shelf?" It was a question that could have made the room tense, but Modi ji's face did not harden. Instead, he smiled faintly. "Sir, trust is not something that can be asked for. It must be earned. If I tell you to believe my words today, they are only words. But if I act and you see the results, then trust will grow by itself. You are right to question me. Questioning those in power is not disrespect. It is responsibility. So hold me accountable. And when something from this notebook becomes reality, I hope you will remember this day." The man gave a small nod, and the audience murmured in agreement. Just then, a middle-aged woman stood up from the back. Her voice trembled. Sir, may I ask something personal? Of course, Modi ji said. She clasped her hands tightly. Have you ever forgiven someone who truly hurt you? The room went still again. It was a question not about policy or politics, but about the heart. Modi ji took a deep breath before answering. Yes, he said. There was a man who once tried to ruin my work, not because I had harmed him, but because he felt threatened by me. He spread lies, turned people against me, and for a long time I carried anger toward him. But one day I realized my anger was not hurting him. It was only hurting me. So I let it go. I did not forget what he had done, but I no longer let it live inside me. Forgiveness does not mean agreeing with what happened. It means choosing to walk forward without dragging the weight of the past with you. He paused, looking at her directly. When you forgive, you are not setting the other person free. You are setting yourself free. A few in the crowd wiped their eyes quietly. Before the moment could fade, a young girl in a school uniform stood up. She couldn't have been more than 16. Sir, I want to help my country, but I feel like I'm too small to make a difference. Everything feels so big, and I'm just one person. Modi ji's eyes softened. Do you know, when I was your age, I felt the same? But small acts, repeated by many, build a great change. You may not clean an entire city, but you can clean your street. You may not teach 1,000 children, but you can help one classmate who is struggling. Change does not begin with size. It begins with sincerity. Never tell yourself you are too small. The ocean is made of drops. The girl smiled shyly and sat down. Then, something unexpected happened. A man in a worn jacket, perhaps in his 40s, raised his hand and said, Sir, I was against you. I didn't trust you, but after hearing you today, I think maybe I was wrong. His voice cracked slightly, as though the admission was difficult. Modi ji looked at him and smiled warmly. Sir, I respect your honesty. It takes courage to change one's opinion. And let me tell you, you may have disagreed with me, but your voice still matters. Disagreement is not the enemy of progress. Silence is. So keep speaking, keep questioning, but also keep listening. The man gave a small nod, and for the first time that day, his expression softened. The moderator on stage signaled that they had time for one last question in this segment. From the far left side of the hall, a thin, nervous boy stood up. Sir, he said in a barely audible voice, my father left us when I was 7. My mother works day and night. Sometimes I feel angry at the world. I don't want to be like this, but I don't know how to let go. Modi ji's gaze was steady but kind. Son, life has already tested you in ways many adults have not faced. Anger is a natural response to pain, but if you let it stay too long, it will burn you from inside. The best way to let go is to turn your pain into strength. Study hard. Work hard. Become the person your father should have been proud of, and the son your mother will always be proud of. Your story is still being written. Do not let someone else's decision be the final chapter. The boy's eyes glistened. He nodded slowly, his shoulders lifting as though a small weight had been removed. The short break ended, and as Narendra Modi ji returned to his seat, the hall erupted in warm applause, but it wasn't the loud celebratory kind. It was steady and full of respect, like the sound of many hearts acknowledging something unspoken. He set the worn notebook from Manoj's father gently on the table beside him, as if it were a sacred text, and looked out at the faces before him. He began without waiting for the next hand to rise. Friends, he said, these last hours have been about your voices, your lives, your questions. But I want to share something with you now, a moment in my own life that shaped me forever. The room leaned in. Modi ji rarely spoke about his private pain in such settings. Many years ago, he continued, there was a man in my village who everyone respected. One day, he spread a false rumor about me, that I had taken something that wasn't mine. People who had known me since childhood began to doubt me. I had done nothing wrong, but the shame felt real because the whispers were constant. I remember walking home one evening and hearing 2 children repeat the rumor to each other. I wanted to shout at them, to tell them the truth, but I stayed silent. That night, I made a decision. I would prove my innocence not with my tongue, but with my life. It took years, but eventually the truth came out. The man apologized. By then, I had already forgiven him. He paused and let the words settle. Why am I telling you this? Because there will be times when the world misjudges you. In those moments, do not waste all your energy fighting lies. Use it to build a truth so strong it can never be broken. Before anyone could speak, a woman in her early 30s stood up. Her hands trembled slightly. Sir, what if you fight for what is right but you are punished for it? I work in a government office. I tried to stop a wrong thing from happening, but now my seniors treat me like I am the problem. Modi Ji's voice grew firm. When you choose to do what is right, you must be ready for storms. Truth is not weak, but it can be lonely. I have faced such loneliness many times. There were days when it felt like the entire world was against me. But if your conscience is clear, you are never truly alone. There will always be someone, somewhere, who sees you and respects you for standing firm. And sometimes, the reward for doing what is right does not come quickly. It comes later, when you least expect it. The woman's eyes filled with tears, but they were the kind of tears that carried strength rather than defeat. From the back of the room, a man in a mechanics uniform spoke next. Sir, my son keeps saying he wants to become something great, but we are poor. I can barely pay for his school. Sometimes I feel like telling him to stop dreaming so he won't be disappointed. Modi Ji shook his head gently. Never tell your child to stop dreaming. Dreams are the one thing poverty cannot take away. I know because I was once a child whose dreams seemed bigger than my world. Your son may not have everything others have, but he can still have determination. Tell him that his dream will require more work, more patience, more discipline. But it is not impossible. Help him take one step at a time. And when he looks back years later, he will remember that his father never became the wall that blocked his path. He became the bridge that helped him cross. The man lowered his head, clearly moved. At that moment, a young college student stood up and asked a question that caught everyone's attention. Sir, you speak about kindness, patience, and forgiveness. But in politics, isn't it dangerous to be too kind? Don't people take advantage of you? Modi Ji smiled slightly. Kindness is not weakness. It is strength under control. You can be firm and still be respectful. You can set boundaries without becoming cruel. I have learned that when you meet aggression with more aggression, you create an endless cycle. But when you meet it with calm strength, you often disarm it. There will always be those who mistake kindness for weakness. Let them. Your strength will be shown in your results, not in your volume. The audience murmured in agreement. A few moments later, an elderly woman with silver hair raised her voice from the second row. Sir, do you think one person can truly change a whole country? Modi Ji looked around the hall and then back at her. Yes, he said firmly, but not by working alone. One person can start the spark, but it is the people who carry the flame. When I speak to you here, I am not changing the country alone. We are doing it together. Each act of honesty, each moment of compassion, each refusal to give up. These are the bricks that build a stronger nation. One person can inspire, but it takes many to finish the work. And then, just when the session seemed to be finding a gentle rhythm, a small boy walked toward the front, holding something wrapped in cloth. Security moved forward, but the boy's mother called out, Please, it's just a gift. Modi Ji gestured for them to let him through. The boy handed him the bundle. Inside was a simple clay lamp. My mother made this, the boy said shyly. She says you should have it because you bring light. Modi Ji took the lamp carefully, his expression softening. Thank you, he said, his voice quiet but full of feeling. Light only matters when there is darkness, and we all have the power to bring light, even in the smallest way. The final hour of the session began with a strange, almost electric stillness. The clay lamp and the worn notebook still sat on the table beside Narendra Modi Ji, symbols that now seemed to belong to everyone in the room. They were reminders of why each person had come, to feel heard, to see their struggles reflected, and perhaps to walk away with a little more courage than they had brought in. Modi Ji leaned forward slightly, resting his hands on the table. Friends, he said softly, we have spoken about pain, about dreams, about courage. But before we close today, I want to remind you of something important. Every person here is carrying a story no one else fully knows. We often see only the outer life, the clothes, the smile, the profession. We do not see the nights they stayed awake in worry, the battles they fought silently, the losses they buried in their heart. If we remembered this every day, we would be slower to judge and quicker to help. The audience listened in complete silence, the weight of his words settling deep. Then a man in his late 40s stood up. Sir, I have a question. What if you give everything, your time, your effort, your love, and still nothing changes? What if no matter how hard you try, the world remains the same? Modiji nodded slowly. This is a question many ask in their hearts, even if they do not speak it. I will tell you what I have learned. You may not see the change you worked for in your lifetime, but your effort plants seeds that will grow when you are gone. The tree may give shade to people you will never meet, but that does not make your work any less valuable. Sometimes we must accept that we are part of a chain. Those before us made it possible for us to stand here, and we make it possible for others to stand taller tomorrow. The man sat down quietly, his eyes fixed on the floor, but his shoulders no longer slumped. From the back, a young woman raised her hand. Her voice was steady but filled with emotion. Sir, what is the hardest decision you have ever made? Modiji's gaze grew distant for a moment, as though he was looking back across decades. There was a time, he said, when I had to choose between staying in a place that was safe and familiar or leaving it to serve in a place where I knew no one. I chose to leave. I left behind comfort, people I loved, and a life that could have been peaceful. But I knew if I stayed, I would never grow into the person I needed to be. The hardest decisions are not between right and wrong. They are between what is comfortable and what is necessary. There was a stillness after his answer, the kind that comes when people read. Liz, they have just heard something they will carry with them for years. A young boy's voice broke the quiet. Sir, are you ever afraid? The final hour of the session began with a strange, almost electric stillness. The clay lamp and the worn notebook still sat on the table beside Narendra Modiji, symbols that now seemed to belong to everyone in the room. They were reminders of why each person had come, to feel heard, to see their struggles reflected, and perhaps to walk away with a little more courage than they had brought in. Modiji leaned forward slightly, resting his hands on the table. Friends, he said softly, we have spoken about pain, about dreams, about courage. But before we close today, I want to remind you of something important. Every person here is carrying a story no one else fully knows. We often see only the outer life, the clothes, the smile, the profession. We do not see the nights they stayed awake in worry, the battles they fought silently, the losses they buried in their heart. If we remembered this every day, we would be slower to judge and quicker to help. The audience listened in complete silence, the weight of his words settling deep. Then a man in his late 40s stood up. Sir, I have a question. What if you give everything, your time, your effort, your love, and still nothing changes? What if no matter how hard you try, the world remains the same? Modiji nodded slowly. This is a question many ask in their hearts, even if they do not speak it. I will tell you what I have learned. You may not see the change you worked for in your lifetime, but your effort plants seeds that will grow when you are gone. The tree may give shade to people you will never meet, but that does not make your work any less valuable. Sometimes, we must accept that we are part of a chain. Those before us made it possible for us to stand here, and we make it possible for others to stand taller tomorrow. The man sat down quietly, his eyes fixed on the floor, but his shoulders no longer slumped. From the back, a young woman raised her hand. Her voice was steady but filled with emotion. Sir, what is the hardest decision you have ever made? Modiji's gaze grew distant for a moment, as though he was looking back across decades. There was a time, he said, when I had to choose between staying in a place that was safe and familiar or leaving it to serve in a place where I knew no one. I chose to leave. I left behind comfort, people I loved, and a life that could have been peaceful. But I knew if I stayed, I would never grow into the person I needed to be. The hardest decisions are not between right and wrong. They are between what is comfortable and what is necessary. There was a stillness after his answer, the kind that comes when people realize they have just heard something they will carry with them for years. A young boy's voice broke the quiet. "Sir, are you ever afraid?" Modi Ji smiled faintly. "Yes," he said. "Fear visits me just like it visits you. I have feared failure. I have feared loss. I have feared making the wrong choice. But fear is not the enemy. It is a signal. It shows you that you are standing at the edge of something important. The question is not whether you have fear. The question is whether you let it decide for you. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is walking forward while fear walks beside you." Many in the audience nodded, as if those words had touched a part of them that had been waiting to be spoken to. Then, without warning, an elderly man in a faded kurta stood up. "Sir," he said, "my wife passed away last year. For 50 years we shared everything. Now the house feels empty. I have children, but they are busy with their own lives. How do you fill a space that was once filled by love?" Modi Ji's eyes softened. "You do not fill it," he said quietly. "You honor it. Love is not meant to be replaced. It is meant to be extended. Share it with others who need it. Spend time with children in your village. Guide young people. Comfort those who have lost. You cannot bring back what was, but you can let the love you had continue to live through what you give now. In this way, the space will never feel empty. It will feel like a place where your wife's love still walks beside you." The old man's eyes glistened, and he nodded slowly, as if understanding something he had never considered before. As the final minutes of the event approached, Modi Ji stood, looking over the sea of faces one last time. "You came here with questions," he said, "but you have also given me answers. You have reminded me that leadership is not about speeches or titles. It is about listening. It is about carrying the stories of the people, the pain and the hope, and making sure they are not forgotten. I may forget many things in my life, but I will not forget today." He reached for the clay lamp and held it in one hand, the notebook in the other. "These will go with me. They are not just gifts. They are promises. Promises that dreams will be read, that light will be protected, and that hope will not be allowed to fade." The applause that followed was unlike any before. It was not just for him, but for each person who had stood, spoken, and shared a piece of themselves that day.